I'm Dilek Tuna and you're watching A News. Let's take a look at today's top stories. World leaders are convening in Germany today for the annual Munich Security Conference. Trump revokes a landmark ruling that greenhouse gas emissions endanger public health. And Bangladesh's BNP wins big in first election since Gen Z uprising. World leaders are gathering in Germany for the annual Munich Security Conference today. Transatlantic tensions and the war in Ukraine are expected to dominate discussions.
The Munich Security Conference opens on Friday, bringing together heads of state, ministers and military leaders at a time of growing strain between Europe and the United States. Analysts say the main challenge at the talks will be transatlantic tensions, with disagreements between Europe and the Trump administration over key political issues expected to dominate. The war in Ukraine will also remain central. Beyond these issues, the conference will examine a wider range of topics.
There are smaller but also important panels on regional crisis, but also on issues like technological innovation, the revolution on the battlefield like drones and artificial intelligence.
Weiss highlights a deeper challenge for European leaders. The use of force has returned as an instrument of policy. After decades of relying on peaceful conflict resolution, many Europeans are struggling to adapt to this changing security environment. Security will be tight. Up to 5,000 police officers will be deployed, with support from Austria, Switzerland, France and the Netherlands. Large demonstrations are expected, particularly on Saturday.
The largest gathering day will be on Saturday. One notable gathering is related to the events in Iran. The organizer expects up to 100,000 participants. The Munich police also expect a large number of participants. We cannot yet estimate in detail how many there will ultimately be, but Saturday will be the busiest day for gatherings. And then, of course, there will be the usual gathering of people who want to demonstrate against the Munich Security Conference.
German Chancellor Friedrich Merz is due to open the forum, while US Secretary of State Marco Rubio is expected to hold bilateral meetings on energy and NATO. Last year's gathering saw sharp criticism from US Vice President J.D. Vance over migration and free speech in Europe. Since then, relations have faced further pressure, including disputes over NATO commitments and US interest in Greenland.
EU leaders have agreed on a range of measures to improve how the bloc's internal market works and make European businesses more competitive with China and the US. At a meeting in Belgium, politicians from the EU's 27 member nations decided to speed up the completion of a savings and investment union and to cut red tape.
European leaders gave their unanimous approval to a package of commitments aimed at boosting the bloc's economy and making it competitive with China and the USA at a meeting on Thursday. Officials stressed the importance of fast-tracking a savings and investment union, implementing changes to make it easier for companies to get started and reducing bureaucracy. The European Union Commission will present a plan in March about how to deepen the EU's single market of 450 million consumers. Efforts to boost the European economy have taken on a greater importance following the introduction of tariffs by the Trump administration. Ursula von der Leyen, EU Commission President, said she would accelerate progress on a much-delayed capitals market union that would allow the productive investment of 10 million euros of savings. She said the EU Commission, European Council and EU Parliament were committed to making the bloc more competitive.
We have agreed that next European Council in March, I will present a One Europe, One Market roadmap, an action plan that shows very detailed what are we going to do with timelines, with targets, and with a clear limit of time also to deliver. And the ambition is that we will have this document committed and agreed by not only the Commission but also the two co-legislators, that is the European Council and the Parliament.
Antonio Costa, president of the European Council, said the aim of the measures discussed were to drive investment in Europe.
Our focus today was mostly on how to mobilize private investment. And I was pleased to hear an unanimous support to accelerate the Savings and Investment Union. Europe needs a single and efficient financial system which can better turn European savings into investments in Europe.
Von der Leyen also defended the EU's emissions trading system, stating it has clear benefits, after some leaders called for the system to be changed.
Belgian police are investigating the sale of 23 Commission buildings, searching premises and possible irregularities linked to the European Commission in a €900 million deal.
Belgian police have searched offices linked to the European Commission and Belgium's state investment fund SFPIM as part of a criminal investigation into a major property deal. The raids took place on Thursday related to the 2024 sale of 23 European Commission buildings to the Belgian state. The investigation was first reported by the Britain's Financial Times, which said the buildings were bought by SFPIM for around €900 million. The investigation is being led by the European Public Prosecutor's Office, which looks into suspected crimes involving EU funds. Reacting to the development, a spokesperson for the European Commission said it is fully cooperating with authorities, providing any information needed for a thorough and independent investigation. The spokesperson added that, in the Commission's view, the sale followed proper procedures and was carried out correctly. This isn't the first time the deal has raised concerns. EU auditors flagged the sale last year, noting that SFPIM was the sole bidder and submitted its offer before the official tender. The deal took place under the previous mandate, when Johannes Hahn was the European Commissioner for Budget and Administration. For now, SFPIM says it is fully cooperating with investigators. Belgian police declined to comment, and the country's prosecutor's office has not yet responded to requests for information.
As the war in Ukraine continues, Western allies have reaffirmed their long-term military and financial backing for Kyiv with $48 billion in weapons, while also increasing their strategic focus on the Arctic to counter Russia across multiple fronts. Here's more from our UK correspondent Zeynep Ferhatzadeh.
NATO defense ministers meeting in Brussels on Thursday stressed that support for Ukraine remains their top priority, even as the alliance steps up its focus on security in the Arctic. The talks come as the war enters its fifth year and amid growing concerns over Russia's military activity and wider geopolitical tensions. Ministers welcomed the launch of a new NATO activity called Arctic Sentry, aimed at strengthening the alliance presence in the High North. The initiative brings together NATO's 32 members under a single operational strategy, including Denmark's Arctic endurance exercises and Norway's upcoming cold response drills. Despite the Arctic focus, ministers underlined that Ukraine remains NATO's #1 priority, as Russian attacks on civilian infrastructure continue to leave many without electricity and heating during freezing winter temperatures. British Defence Secretary John Healey said Britain and its allies had pledged around $35 billion in military aid for Ukraine during a meeting of the Ukraine Defence Contact Group, which includes around 50 nations and is co-chaired by the United Kingdom and Germany. He said stepping up support could save lives, pressure Russia and help bring about peace. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said allies have already announced hundreds of millions of dollars in support for the prioritized Ukraine requirements list, which funds purchases of US weapons for Kyiv, with more pledges expected. The United Kingdom announced an additional £500 million in support, including £150 million for US air defense interceptors, while Germany said it will provide 5 additional PAC-3 Patriot interceptors if other allies contribute more missiles. NATO officials say the meeting reflects the alliance's dual focus on supporting Ukraine and strengthening security in the Arctic and across Europe. Zeynep Farizadeh, News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
Kyiv is grappling with winter blackouts again after fresh Russian strikes battered Ukraine's energy network, forcing families to seek heat and food in emergency shelters. As the humanitarian strain grows, President Zelensky says Ukraine remains open to peace talks, but not at the cost of its national interests.
Residents in Kyiv lined up for hot meals after a fresh wave of Russian strikes left parts of the Ukrainian capital without heat, power and water. Overnight, Russia launched drones and ballistic missiles targeting Ukraine's energy system. Officials say tens of thousands of people were affected in Kyiv, as well as in the cities of Dnipro and Odessa. In Kyiv alone, Mayor Vitaly Klitschko says about 3,500 apartment buildings were without heating. Nearly 2,600 high-rise buildings lost electricity in the latest attack, adding to more than 1,000 already cut off by earlier strikes.
After the attack, there was no power or heating. Today, I saw a missile being shot down and burning debris flying everywhere. I could even see it from my window.
I have 5 children, 4 of whom are small. Some of them go to kindergarten. They are also at home because kindergartens were closed due to a lack of heating, and it is very cold. So we are all sitting at home. The elevator is not working. There is no water. The washing machine is not working, and there is no heating. That is the whole problem.
Ukraine's private energy company DTEK says more than 100,000 families are without electricity. One of its thermal power plants was also targeted. Meanwhile, in an interview published by The Atlantic on Thursday, Zelensky said Kyiv was willing to hold both a presidential election and a referendum on a deal. However, he stressed Ukraine would not accept an agreement that harms its national interests.
A 2009 scientific finding concerning the danger of greenhouse gas emissions has been repealed by US President Donald Trump. He argues the reversal will benefit America's auto industry by lowering the cost of production and making cars more affordable.
US President Donald Trump has overturned a scientific determination that greenhouse gas emissions pose a threat to human health. The 2009 endangerment finding, introduced during the first year of former President Barack Obama's first term, concluded that a range of greenhouse gases endangered public health. It became the legal foundation for federal efforts to curb emissions, particularly from vehicles. Its repeal removes the legal basis for federal climate regulations, and so Trump announced the termination of federal greenhouse gas emission standards for all vehicles and engines covering model years from 2012 to 2027, arguing the rules have harmed the US auto industry.
Under the process just completed by the EPA, we are officially terminating the so-called endangerment finding, a disastrous Obama-era policy that severely damaged the American auto industry and massively drove up prices for American consumers. That is why, effective immediately, we're repealing the ridiculous endangerment finding and terminating all additional green emission standards imposed unnecessarily on vehicle models and engines between 2012 and 2027 and beyond.
In a post on social media, Obama criticized the move, saying it would make the United States less healthy and less safe. The White House described the reversal as the largest deregulation effort in American history, arguing it would reduce car prices and cut costs for automakers by $2,400 per vehicle. The endangerment finding had enabled the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to act under the Clean Air Act of 1963 to limit emissions of carbon dioxide, methane, and 4 other heat-trapping pollutants from vehicles, power plants, and other industries. Repealing it will eliminate requirements to measure, report, certify, and comply with federal greenhouse gas standards for cars, though the change may not initially extend to stationary sources such as power plants. Environmental groups say the decision represents the most significant climate rollback to date and have indicated they will challenge it in court.
US President Donald Trump says he expects an agreement with Iran to take shape during the next month, warning Tehran that failure to reach a consensus poses major dangers. It's after the two countries held negotiations last Friday in Oman. They're expected to hold more rounds of talks. Iran has said it's open to negotiations. Trump's comment comes after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with Trump on Wednesday, where they talked about the ongoing nuclear talks with Tehran. During a White House press conference on Thursday, Trump said a deal should happen quickly.
We have to make a deal, otherwise it's going to be very traumatic. Very traumatic. I don't want that to happen, but we have to make a deal. They should have made a deal the first time, and they got Midnight Hammer instead. And this will be very traumatic for Iran if they don't make a deal. Look, if they don't make a deal, then it'll be a different story. But we had a very good meeting yesterday with Bibi Netanyahu, and he understands, but it's ultimately up to me. If the deal isn't a very fair deal and a very good deal with Iran, then it's going to be, I think, a very difficult time for them in the back. I guess over the next month, something like that. Yeah, it shouldn't take, I mean, it should happen quickly. They should agree very quickly.
Syrian forces have taken control of the strategic Al-Tanf military base near the border with Iraq. This comes amid the withdrawal of a long-standing United States troop presence there. Our correspondent in Washington brings us more.
The U.S. Department of War on Thursday officially announced the withdrawal of the last U.S. troops west of the Euphrates River in Syria. The Al-Tanf garrison on the Syria-Iraq-Jordan tri-border area has now been officially vacated. It once served as a major U.S. combat outpost to fight ISIS terrorists in the Syrian desert. Established in 2014 by the U.S. military, the Al-Tanf outpost was also the target of a number of attacks by Iranian-backed militants in the previous years. In April last year, the Department of War announced that the U.S. military would begin consolidating its locations throughout Syria following the territorial defeat of ISIS in 2019. The U.S. military also closed down one of its largest military bases in western Iraq not too long ago. U.S. Central Command has increased its cooperation with the new Syrian government in fighting ISIS remnants since the fall of the Assad regime in Syria. Approximately 1,000 American troops remain spread out throughout a number of sites in northeastern Syria. And during a recent meeting of the Defeat ISIS Global Coalition earlier in the week, U.S. officials praised the Syrian government for assuming national leadership of the counter-ISIS efforts in the country. And as Damascus takes the lead in ensuring that ISIS is never able to reconstitute in Syria, more U.S. military forces are expected to gradually withdraw in the near future if conditions on the ground prove to be conducive. I'm Ubi Shabander, A News, Washington.
The Bangladesh Nationalist Party has won a landslide victory in Friday's parliamentary election, winning a decisive two-thirds majority. Latest counts show the BNP won more than 200 seats in the 300-member House of the nation. BNP leader Tariq Rahman is widely expected to be sworn in as Prime Minister. He's the son of the former President Ziaur Rahman and returned in December after 18 years abroad. Shafiqur Rahman, leader of the Islamist Jamiat-e-Islami, secured just 70 seats. The victory secures a strong mandate in a vote widely seen as key to restoring political stability in the South Asian nation. Japanese authorities have seized a Chinese fishing boat and arrested its captain near Nagasaki in southwest Japan. Officials say the vessel was operating inside Japan's exclusive economic zone. The captain, a 47-year-old Chinese national, is accused of ignoring orders to stop for inspection. He was arrested on Thursday. Chief Cabinet Secretary Minoru Kihara says the case is under investigation. He adds that Japan will continue firm enforcement against illegal foreign fishing. The incident comes at a time of heightened diplomatic tensions between Japan and China. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un appears to be strengthening the public role of his daughter in what analysts see as possible succession planning. South Korea's National Intelligence Service told lawmakers that Kim Joo-ae, who is in her early teens, is showing signs of involvement in policy matters. The agency says it will closely watch whether she attends an upcoming Workers' Party meeting and whether she is given an official title. Kim Joo-ae has increasingly appeared alongside her father during military inspections, including weapons projects. China is entering the peak of its Lunar New Year travel rush, with a record 9.5 billion journeys expected during the 40-day period known as Chunyun, the world's largest annual migration.
China is entering the peak of its Lunar New Year travel rush, with authorities expecting a record 9.5 billion journeys during the 40-day period known as Chunyun, widely considered the largest annual movement of people anywhere in the world. Around 540 million trips will be made by rail and 95 million by air, while billions more journeys will unfold on highways as families drive back to their hometowns. At major stations in Beijing and Shanghai, travellers queue with oversized suitcases, cartons of fruit, wrapped gifts and boxes of regional specialities destined for family dinner tables. For many migrant workers, this is the most extended break of the year. Some will travel for more than 30 hours to reach villages thousands of kilometres away. Train stations provide free hot water for instant noodles, and overnight passengers sleep sitting upright, wrapped in coats, determined to make it home before New Year's Eve. The Lunar New Year, beginning February 17th, marks the start of the year in the traditional Chinese zodiac calendar. It is a time of reunion dinners, red envelopes filled with money for children, fireworks, lion dances and temple fairs. The New Year's Eve meal is considered the most important dinner of the year, symbolising unity and prosperity. For millions, the journey itself, crowded, exhausting and sometimes chaotic, is part of the ritual. The sheer scale is unmatched. Billions of journeys compressed into just 40 days, powered not only by transport networks but by tradition, memory and the simple desire to sit at the same table once a year.
Now, after the break, we'll take a look at the major stories from the region.
Well, hello and welcome to Primetime. What a show we've got lined up for you. In a complex world, clarity is power. Two hours live, diplomacy dissected in a spin-free environment. That's Prime Time with me, Guy Schoen, weekdays on A News.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
Welcome back to A News. Now let's take a closer look at the key stories shaping the region. The United Nations Security Council has unanimously voted to extend the mandate of the sanctions monitoring team overseeing measures related to Afghanistan, keeping the existing restrictions on Taliban leaders in place for another year. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis has the details from Kabul.
The UN Security Council renewed the so-called 1988 sanctions regime, which targets specific individuals and entities linked to the Taliban. The measures include travel bans, asset freezes and arms embargo provisions imposed on listed members of the movement and associated figures. The monitoring team, which reports to the Security Council, is tasked with assessing the implementation and effectiveness of these sanctions, as well as tracking security, political and humanitarian developments across Afghanistan. In a message posted on X, the United Kingdom's mission to the United Nations said that Council had unanimously renewed the 1988 sanctions regime against the Taliban, adding that the authorities in Kabul must take meaningful steps to meet their international obligations, including on counter-terrorism and the protection of the rights of women and girls. During the Council deliberations, Russia emphasized the need to maintain engagement with the Taliban authorities, stressing that dialogue should continue alongside the sanctions measures. The sanctions framework was first introduced in 2011, separating Taliban-related sanctions from those imposed on Al-Qaeda. It has since remained one of the main tools used by the Security Council to pressure Taliban leaders while allowing humanitarian and diplomatic engagement with the Taliban. The extension means the monitoring team will continue its work over the coming year, with regular reports to the Council expected to shape future decisions on sanctions and international engagement with Kabul. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
Top-ranking Iranian officials say that consultations are underway to determine the date and venue for the next round of indirect nuclear negotiations with the United States. A News' Turaj Shiraliliu has more in Tehran.
Senior Iranian officials, including President Masoud Pezeshkian, Secretary of Supreme National Security Council Ali Larijani, as well as Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, have hinted at ongoing consultations to decide date and venue of upcoming mediated negotiations with the United States. The same officials have termed Washington's conditions of zero enrichment and limiting the range of ballistic missiles to 500 kilometers as excessive demands, which are preventing the talks from reaching a deal. Addressing a nationwide rally in Tehran on Wednesday to mark the 47th anniversary of the 1979 Islamic Revolution, President Pezeshkian said that Iran will not give in to excessive U.S. demands. He said that distrust of West and U.S. hinders progress in the talks, and added that date and venue of next round of talks are under consultations. Also, Security Chief Larijani, who visited Oman and Qatar after the Iran-U.S. talks on Friday, said the date and venue of upcoming talks are not decided, but added that the discussions were good to some extent. In an interview with the Doha-based Al Jazeera TV, he reiterated that Tehran will only negotiate over its nuclear program and that Iran has not received a specific proposal from the U.S. side. And Iran's top diplomat, Araghchi, told reporters on Wednesday that the country's ballistic missiles capability is not a subject on the agenda of the resumed negotiations with the United States. The statements of Iranian officials were made as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited Washington with Iran on the agenda of his meetings with U.S. officials. Turaj Shiraliliu, Tehran, for A News.
A major criminal case has been launched in Azerbaijan against several well-known political figures. Authorities say they plotted with foreign intelligence services to overthrow the government.
Azerbaijan's State Security Service says it has uncovered what it calls a coordinated but multi-layered attempt to seize power with foreign involvement. One strand of the case centres on Abbas Abbasov and Rustam Ibrahimbeyov. Investigators say they co-founded an organisation abroad in 2012 known as the Union of Russian Azerbaijani Organisations, also referred to as the Union of Billionaires. According to the indictment, the group was created with the support of foreign special service agencies to influence political processes inside Azerbaijan. Prosecutors allege that around the 2013 presidential election, funds amounting to more than 933,000 manats were channeled to mobilize people from different regions for rallies and mass unrest. A separate part of the case focuses on Ali Karimli, chairman of the Azerbaijan Popular Front Party, and party members including Fuad Gahramanli and Ganimat Zaidov. Investigators claim they held secret communications with representatives of a foreign state seeking organizational support to bring Karimli to power. In return, it is alleged that assurances were given that the country would gradually move towards membership of the Collective Security Treaty Organization. Ali Karimli is also accused of attempting to exploit the July 2020 march in Baku, originally held in support of the army, by instructing supporters to create chaos and seize key state buildings. Former senior official Ramiz Mehdiev faces separate charges of treason and money laundering. Authorities say he sent strategic proposals to foreign intelligence representatives in 2025 and legalized more than 17 million manats of criminal proceeds. Several suspects are currently abroad and have been declared wanted.
Russia and Armenia are starting detailed talks on restoring 2 railway sections in Armenia. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexei Overchuk says the move follows a request from the Armenian side. The lines would connect Armenia's rail network with Azerbaijan near the city of Yerashk and with Turkey near the settlement of Akuryan. The total length of the sections is to be restored is about 14 kilometres. Overchuk says the project would give Russia direct rail access to Azerbaijan's Nakhchivan region, to Turkey and Mediterranean ports, and further to Iran, opening routes toward the Persian Gulf and the Indian Ocean. A bilateral roundtable under the Peace Bridge initiative will take place in Armenia on February 13th and 14th. Civil society representatives from Armenia and Azerbaijan will meet in Armenia under the Peace Bridge initiative. The gathering will include core participants and a wider group from both sides. The Azerbaijani delegation entered via a delimited border, completing all procedures. Discussions will cover the Washington Summit Peace Agenda, regional security, economic cooperation, public perceptions, and civil society's role in building trust. This follows previous exchanges, including a roundtable in Yerevan in October and a visit by Armenian civil society to Baku in November. Kazakhstan is moving closer to a possible major constitutional overhaul. The country is preparing for a referendum on the proposed new constitution next month. The draft text sees changes ranging from the structure of parliament to language provisions and the balance of power. A-News' Fariza Kalimurzina has the details in Almaty.
Kazakhstan is preparing for a nationwide referendum on a new constitution after President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev signed a decree setting the vote for March 15, 2026. Voters will be asked if they approve the draft basic law published on February 12th. The authorities described the drafting process as inclusive. A special constitutional commission worked for several months, holding public hearings, consulting legal experts, and reviewing more than 10,000 proposals submitted by citizens through online platforms. This time, the changes go far beyond earlier revisions. Kazakhstan has amended its constitution repeatedly since the late 1990s, but the current draft rewrites around 84% of the text, effectively replacing the existing constitutional framework. Among the key reforms are a shift from a bicameral parliament to a single-chamber legislature, the introduction of the post of vice president, and the formal establishment of the constitution's supremacy over international treaties. President Tokayev says the overhaul would redistribute powers, strengthen checks and balances, and improve the stability of political institutions. Analysts see the reforms as part of a broader effort to move away from personality-driven rule toward more institutionalized governance, while critics argue that political and civic reforms should advance faster. One of the most sensitive parts of the draft concerns language. The constitution reaffirms Kazakh as the state language, while Russian continues to be officially used in state institutions. A recent wording change replaced the phrase saying Russian is used on equal footing with Kazakh with a softer formulation stating it's used along with Kazakh. Authorities describe the change as technical, but for many it has symbolic weight, reopening debates over identity, sovereignty, and the country's post-Soviet legacy. If approved, the new constitution would come into force on July 1st, 2026. The adoption date would also become a new national public holiday. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
Turkey is urging closer cooperation across the Islamic world to strengthen transport links and boost economic growth. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan addressed transport ministers from the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, highlighting the role of infrastructure in transforming fast-growing markets into strategic power.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has called for enhanced transport integration among members of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, or OIC, saying reliable transport networks are essential to unlocking the Islamic world's economic and commercial potential. Erdogan made the remarks in a video message to an OIC transport ministers meeting in Istanbul held on Thursday. He said the Islamic world is known for its young populations and rapidly growing markets, but stressed that these advantages can only be fully realized through modern and integrated transport systems. According to the Turkish president, highways, railways, seaports, and airports must function as a single network to transform economic potential into what he described as strategic power. Erdogan pointed to Turkey's own experience, highlighting major infrastructure investments carried out in recent years. He noted that large-scale projects, such as the Marmara Rail Tunnel and the Eurasia Tunnel, had already served to bolster the country's rail, maritime, and aviation capacity. The president also reiterated Turkey's continued support for the Trans-Caspian Middle Corridor project, an ambitious east-west connectivity scheme linking China to European markets. Erdogan said Ankara seeks to enhance connectivity among OIC member states by developing cross-border transit corridors and advancing joint infrastructure projects. He asserted that stronger transport links would help expand trade, improve logistics, and deepen economic cooperation across the Islamic world. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation brings together 56 Muslim-majority countries across the Middle East, Asia, and Africa, including both Turkey and Azerbaijan. Together, OIC member states represent a combined population of more than 2 billion people. This is Adam Aro for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
After a short break, we'll examine President Erdogan's call for deeper transport integration across Muslim-majority countries and what it could mean for regional trade and diplomacy. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has called for stronger transport integration among Muslim-majority countries, arguing that enhanced infrastructure connectivity would boost trade, economic resilience and political coordination across the Islamic world. The proposal raises questions about regional logistics corridors, economic alignment and the broader geopolitical role Turkey seeks to play. Now, let's bring in our guest, Mr. Melih Demirtas. He's a political analyst and former diplomat, joining us from Ankara, Turkey. Melih, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Ms. Tuna.
Now, let's begin with the strategic vision of Erdogan. What problem is he trying to solve through stronger transport integration? And is this primarily an economic proposal or a geopolitical solution aimed at increasing Turkey's leadership role within Muslim-majority states?
Yes, it's the crucial question and maybe the framework you just point out. Definitely a political motivation standing on. And we can say that not only economy, not only this organization of this Islamic Cooperation Organization is maybe built for this economic sake, for maybe commercial ideals, but in this time, especially in such a period where the crisis really any months and we are more burning situation in other geography. First of all, in our very near geography, also to Azerbaijan and to Turkey, we can say that something must be done. It can be done, of course, much more easily and much more structurally and constructively, I think, in multilateral platforms. Because of this, OIC, an organization, Islamic Cooperation Organization, gives really a good and important platform to talk about such problems. Yes, the issue of connectivity, one of the most popular in the agenda of many diplomats nowadays, not only some tradesmen or commercial personalities, but for all diplomats or also policymakers, an important, of course, statesmen like Mr. Erdogan, Mr. Aliyev, and also the other leaders of this organization, they really attribute a special importance of this connectivity. With their left projects, I think, of Turkish and, of course, Azerbaijani and some other friends inside our geography, I think this connectivity is also shining in front of our maybe entrepreneurs. And we can say, although some important crises still going on, think about Iran, think about Syrian or Palestinian cases, they are not coming into a real, I think, a final solution still. But in spite of that, despite of that, we can feel that such multilateral platforms still give some hopes about some economic solutions. And yes, for your question, I can say that behind this economic motives, there is a very definite political motive, but we cannot maybe shorten it like the Turkish leadership or Azerbaijan leadership or Iranian supremacy. No, not one state, but one maybe multilateral idea which can come maybe into reality with a very important multilateral platform like OIC.
And Melih, what existing transport corridors or initiatives could realistically anchor this vision? So there's the Middle Corridor, Gulf Rail links, Central Asian routes.
Starting from 19th century, Ms. Tuna, I think it's always also on the agenda of some important strategists. Think about some famous European statesmen, as you said, from this Gulf road, from this Baghdad road, famous road. It's coming into reality maybe with their also some realist politics. But nowadays, actually, when we are coming to the time of the 21st century, we can say that some other roads also shining in front of us. And as you said, this middle corridor is also thanks to help with some important strategic gains of Azerbaijan, also with the partnership of this NIV and strength partnership of Azerbaijan and Armenia. And also thanks to this important maybe partnership in this Turkic world, which really encompasses also Kazakh, Uzbek and other brothers important roads. And they are coming really into a reality and into connection with this Anatolian road, and it's coming like this famous saying from London to Beijing. But as this OIC geographies shows us, this is not only road. As you mentioned, the continent Africa, the continent Middle East, and also this region between these important continents, these brothers and the important countries there, the partner countries, they're also giving some new hopes to talk about some new other roads. About this historical situation, yes, the Gulf road is still important, but unfortunately, some strategic, very important geopolitical problems still going on. Think about Iranian case. And thanks to this, as I said, Azerbaijani and new Armenian partnership, at least we can hope that this middle corridor, and also thanks to help also with the help of maybe Chinese new idea of this Belt and Road project, also or new partner, I mean in the region, United States, important trade and commerce representatives, we can see that many actors are here and many actors, I think, ready to invest more about this corridor, which are really linking us. I mean, linking the OIC, also linking the Turkic world.
And how feasible do you think is deeper integration given the political fragmentation across the Muslim world?
Unfortunately, the shadow of conflicts, the shadow of some communitarian clashes, these are always this unchanged reality of this geography for maybe last century, for maybe 200 years. Of course, it includes, unfortunately, quote-unquote Orientalist understanding of some other Western partners or friends who are really having important structural projects for such geographies. But still, we must come together to exceed these barriers. Yes, there are important political cleavages still inside these communities. Even take Iran, take Iraq. I think till this year, even for Syria, we could not maybe have chance to talk about such important solutions. But at the end of the day, some problems maybe can be solved with this dialogue. And I hope that at least for some other partners, and at least for some Gulf countries and for African brothers and partners, we can see that some hopes for dialogue and some hopes for this community solution is on the agenda, but we must still talk about some remaining problems. First of all, about the Palestinian issue, is bleeding, I think, important humanitarian problem, and also about Iranian case, we must talk more.
And would this integration or collaboration require new financing mechanisms, and who would fund this large-scale infrastructure?
As in my previous response, I touched maybe a little bit. Many important actors are here now. I think 2 or 3 years ago, we already think about that maybe some Russian influence area is still going on, or maybe Chinese Belt and Roads, very shining project is also here. But now I think starting from maybe last year, we can see that United States is also coming here. Also many important countries and important partners from European Union. Think about their last visits to, of course, Caucasia, to Central Asia, and also some other countries in Asia. We can see that many important players who are representing maybe quote-unquote this old world, but also who are representing the new system, they maybe want to have these new bridges. Yes, it's also full of maybe some historical baggages, full of some still conflictual interests between the actors, but also it really represents a new area which can be both beneficial for these new actors and old actors and for their commercial systems. And I think for both United States and for both China in Asia, even this, again, important problem in Ukraine continues, still all these actors can have a voice and investment in a very near future.
And Melih, how might Gulf states, particularly Saudi Arabia and the UAE, view Turkey positioning itself as a logistical hub?
The actors sometimes having the same path in thinking and in making a one voice in this foreign policy, and sometimes they are having some divergences and some other voices between each other. And when the issue and when the topic is Turkey, I think many actors have some important changing, I think, attitudes through the time. I think like 6 months ago, you can feel or hear some other things, and maybe 6 months later, you can find another things, because it's also realpolitik, it's also diplomacy. Think about Saudi Arabia. Of course, we had important maybe issues to be solved in a very near past. But I think for the near term, as you maybe followed from the latest news, we have really a constructive now dialogue and partnership, for example, with Saudi Arabia. About UAE, of course, United Arab Emirates is also, again, quote unquote, is a shining investment hub for many actors. I think starting from United States, also from this Western countries, I mean, first of all, European Union. I always call this UAE the new Singapore style of new creation, constructed creation of such a commerce. But still, of course, in the past, we have also another political issues to be solved or to discuss with these actors. But about this investment projections and about this quote-unquote leadership of Turkey, I think this last month and this last year gives more hopes compared to the past. And at least we can have a real, maybe thanks to the United States again, because Mr. Trump and Mr. Trump's foreign policies really starts to change some things much more very rapidly and fastly. And after that date, and after his presidency's new terms, we can see that such actors come real closer. Even the past and even the former issues still to be discussed. And we will see, Ms. Tuna, because commerce and profits and profit maximization for nation states, they're always at the hands of these decision makers as a must. And we will see and we will observe as political scientists and researchers.
And what role could Azerbaijan and the South Caucasus play in this proposed network?
Yeah, so brother country Azerbaijan really has made an important step in first of all, exceeding this barrier of this realpolitik, I will call again, because realpolitik sometimes limit yourself in some historical baggages, in some very unending military clashes, also communitarian sufferings. But now, as we have seen in this last 3, 4, even 5 years, we can see that Mr. Aliyev, his new cadre, and his also these diplomats and brilliant maybe decision takers in Azerbaijan, they really took the roads of binding these regions. I mean, between Eurasia, between Middle East, even between United States, China, and Russia. Such an actor, such a middle power, we can call in international relations, also makes these important investments to these corridors. Starting from this middle corridor and with the new name, the Strip, I mean, the former name of Zengezur corridor, and even to combine all these things with some quote-unquote hard actors, which is, for example, Iran, which is Russia. Azerbaijan makes an important diplomacy, in commercial diplomacy, in realist diplomacy, in political maybe influences. I think we really must give an important hope, an important realm for Azerbaijan for more, I think, a combination of such roads, also in the middle roads, middle corridor, but also for these southern corridors, which includes the African, also Arabic brothers and partners.
And are there security risks, Medih, particularly in conflict-prone transit zones that could possibly weaken this integration?
Sure. This is security and the combination of this military, first of all, proposals and this commercial maybe tactics. We've seen sometimes a real dilemma in the many special decision takers' agenda. Think about this last months of Ukrainian crisis last year. We always seen that some important linkages, even the gas tunnels, even some important, European infrastructure, which is also binding these roads. I mean, the energy roads, they are bombed. They make some conspiracy theories, which is done by Ukraine or Russia. We do not know still, of course, in such a realpolitik time, to secure such important roads, to secure such important, especially linkages between the countries. It also deserves a special attention. Yes, some important maybe intelligence tactics, some important maybe military tactics must be given also a priority. Also in OIC, I mean Organization Islamic Cooperation Organization, we also must maybe find a special unit to talk about this issue. I think Turkey has now a special also experience about securing such maybe tunnels, such linkages. And I think we will find a new partnership in this projects about the securing the order and about especially hard security combining with the soft security of commerce.
Miri, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for your analysis. It's always a pleasure talking to you on the program.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
That's the news for this hour. Stay tuned to A News for more updates, and thank you for watching.